Hey, fellow patriots, I'm Bree.
And I'm Blaze. Some call me Pa. It has been said that we have 4 boxes to keep ourselves free. These are the soap box, the ballot box, the jury box, and the ammo box.
And we are the 4th box. We are here to arm you with enough information, resources, and skills to take back your freedom, increase your self-sufficiency, and inspire you to join in the fight against tyranny.
Thomas Jefferson said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Thank you for joining us and for joining in this fight.
Welcome back to the 4th box.
Alrighty, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the 4th Box podcast. We find ourselves in the midst of a storm of chaos, as it seems to always be. Some weeks we get on here and things feel a little slow, though they never really are. Other weeks we get in here and it feels like there is so much going on that if we wanted to touch on everything, we'd be here for maybe 5 hours. So we're going to try not to do that. We're going to try to keep it at an hour. But sometimes some of these conversations go a little bit longer because there's just so much that we want to hit on and so much that we feel like is important to share our thoughts on. So with that, how's it going, Pops?
Yeah, going well. Hard to believe it's a week already since you were here and we did the podcast together. But greetings going out to everyone. From the virtual Buckman Tavern, we are happy to bring you the 4th Box podcast. 6 days into a brand new year, and already there is much to talk about. We kind of took it easy through the Christmas and New Year's holiday. Didn't get too laser focused on things going on, but I think we'll get back on track tonight. We're certainly hopeful that everybody enjoyed their holiday season, recognizing the Savior's birth as the reason for the season with your family, friends, and having joy in your heart. My toast tonight, I'm sending it out to all the peaceful protesters on the anniversary of J6, what has become an acronym that almost everybody is aware of, J6. I'm sending a toast out to all of those. I just had an opportunity to visit with a friend that I was there with myself yesterday, but I raised my glass to all those who peacefully protested in an effort to shine light on what obviously was a questionable election, which subsequently was a staged event by those in power to make sure that they got the thing tilted their way, casting a very dark shadow over anybody who would speak out against the agenda. And I think as we go along through this new year, we will be talking about the censorship and the silencing of voices that are speaking out against the agenda. And this is a grave danger, as the forefathers warned us, that speech and being able to share our ideas without fear of reprisal is certainly a key to staying free. And we can see it going on around us where voices are being silenced. So I raise my glass of water tonight to all those who participated peacefully in the J6 event, and especially those who suffered at the hands of weaponized government and spent long years in the gulag down there in Washington, D.C. My hat goes off to all of you. Cheers.
Here, here.
My quote tonight: the people cannot delegate to government the power to do anything which would be unlawful for them to do themselves. So, as a prelude to our lead-off topic for discussion tonight, do you think any of us as individuals, had we the ability to go into another country and snatch somebody out of that country and bring them back here, do you believe that would be lawful? Well, if it's not lawful for us to do, as John Locke suggests in this quote, then it is not legal for government to do, because government cannot do anything. We cannot delegate a power to government to do anything which would be unlawful for us ourselves to do. So that was from John Locke. I hope that sets us up nice for our discussion tonight. I know there certainly is a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on already 1 week into the new year.
Yeah, great quote to start us off for sure. It's such an interesting and simplistic view on what's going on in Venezuela, or rather with Venezuela. This was something we touched on a few weeks back very, very lightly. I personally was hopeful that we would not come to this point with Venezuela, but I was also hopeful that we wouldn't come to the point that we have with a lot of the countries that we've engaged with since Trump took office. So it's pretty disappointing, just from someone who was adamant that we were not going to be getting into new wars, from someone who campaigned on the fact that through their first term, they didn't start any new wars. That was such a massive selling point for so many people. And we've engaged kinetically with countries all around the globe. And starting with this one, of course, Venezuela, I mean, we can talk about this a lot of different ways, and we're going to, I think, but I first want to share the video that you shared of Owen Schroyer just briefly sharing his thoughts on it, so we can kind of recap our thoughts on what he had to say and just kind of break things down from there.
Great.
Honestly crazy what MAGA has become. And I'm all for people having different political opinions. I don't want to exist in a cult. You know, people are going to have different opinions than I have, and they're going to have different policies that they support, and they're going to have different things that they want to see done and different ways of getting them done. This is normal. We should all have different ideas, and we should be hearing different ideas. But to watch whatever it is now, formerly known as MAGA, the Trump base, turn into just slop-eating sheeple is really incredible. And if you're evaluating this from a psychological perspective, there is probably no greater testament to this being the case than what we're seeing today. This is a regime change war. This is a special interest regime change war for the oil companies. This is a foreign interest regime change war for Israel. That's what this is. And so if you support that, then that's fine. You have every right as an American to express that opinion and to support that policy from Donald Trump. But don't kid yourselves. Don't become dishonest and people that are lost in a world that doesn't exist. Oh, Trump defeated communism. No, he didn't. Did we end the welfare state? Did we stop all the foreign aid? Are we going to invade China next? This was not about communism. Stop it. Oh, he's stopping the drugs. He's stopping the killer drugs. The CIA runs the narco game. Big Pharma? The COVID-19 vaccines? Where are the drugs coming from? They're coming from Mexico. Oh, it's about ending the drugs. Stop it. Just admit what it is. And if you support it, then that's fine. But see, the fact that they can't be honest about what it is, that's the psychological tell. They are in denial. They know they've been deceived. They know this is not what they voted for. They know this is everything that Trump stood against. And here we are again today. And you know what you have in the streets? Foreign flags. Foreign flags in the streets. When do Americans get their day to celebrate? When do we arrest the deep state? When do we arrest all of the Epstein clients? When do we arrest all the billionaire elite pedophiles? When do we drain the swamp? When do we arrest the people that facilitated the border invasion? When do we arrest the people that put innocent Americans in prison for speech? When do we arrest the American criminals? Or does MAGA not stand for that anymore?
So there you go. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I was very interested in sharing that clip. I think it's about 2.5, 3 minutes long. And I thought it was very concise, to the point. I think what many of us are feeling and trying to awaken the the folks that supported Trump to recognize that many of the promises made are falling significantly short or being completely breached the other way. And I don't think that if you are truly MAGA, a person who is looking to restore the republic and restore those things that this country was founded on, that you can continue to support things that we obviously were sold were not going to happen. And, there's so many voices. I think there can be arguments made about, trying to stem the flow of drugs and all that. And I think that is certainly a worthwhile activity. But we were oversold that as what this thing was. And, one of the things that I think was a mistake from the Trump administration was letting Hegseth suggest that we know who these people are, we know what they are doing, we know what they are carrying, we know where they are going. Well, if that is all true, then let the American justice system work itself out as these people approach United States waters or set foot on American soil. If you have all this intelligence and ability to monitor them, we don't need to go in the country and snatch somebody who we have deemed to be an unworthy dictator. This is all the same verbiage that we heard leading up to Iraq, and we went in and deposed the leader. Obviously, there was, weapons of mass destruction was the big threat at that particular time. But it was a country with significant oil reserves, which, by the way, Venezuela has the largest oil reserve of heavy sour crude oil, which is a little bit different, takes a little bit more manufacturing steps to make into what most people recognize as usable petroleum. But it's 20% of the world's heavy sour oil crude reserves. It's a little bit hard to tamp that down. I know they spent a lot of time selling the notion that we need to go in there and get this terrible guy out, and we need to go in there and stem the flow of drugs. But it's so ironic to me that we can be sending billions and billions and billions of dollars in the pretentious effort to keep Putin contained, and we could be sending all of these resources to Taiwan to keep China contained for moving into their neighborhood, but we in turn do it ourselves. It's just, it is a complete sellout of those that supported Trump, in my estimation. It's a complete sellout. We cannot kid ourselves, as Owen so, articulately describes. I thought it was a great piece. I thought it was short, very much to the point, covered a lot of ground there. But I think many of us are feeling exactly the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are seeing a lot of people speak out on all of these things. The first thing I want to say about Owen Schroyer, for those who maybe are not familiar with his name, I think it's important to give a little backstory with this context here, is that he was the right-hand man under Alex Jones at InfoWars for a long time. And he did a fantastic job there. When did he leave InfoWars and why? Well, after Trump started breaking his promises after being elected. Because Alex Jones, who was, has historically been the most anti-establishment, anti-mainstream media guy out there. His name is synonymous with being anti-mainstream. Think of any conspiracy, no matter how far down the rabbit hole it goes. Alex has pretty much covered it at length. And now, after Trump was elected last year, we started seeing these promises being broken, one after another, after another, after another, after another. And Alex didn't separate himself from that, which is something he would have historically done with anyone else. And Owen said, well, I can't sit by and not speak out on this. He wasn't able to speak his real feelings at InfoWars. So he went and started his own thing. And I think it's important because that's really such a micro example of what we see going on in the right-wing movement, where you have these people who are so tied to this idea that Trump represented that they are now not able to split themselves from it for the values that they were originally seeking out in him. And the things that Owen discusses here are so spot on. I mean, the big one for me, other than the simple fact that this is not what they're saying it is, and it's a flat out lie, is that we haven't arrested any of the other people in our own country that we have. I mean, look at January 6th. How many people have done horrible, horrible things? How many people have lied about that? Under oath, public officials lied to our faces. They have not been punished. We haven't punished anyone for the whole COVID-19 ordeal. I mean, our government has been kicking us down time and time again, and we are not doing anything about it. The current administration, who promised they were going to do something about it, didn't. Instead, they took our tax dollars and went to a country that, frankly, we could care less about. It's like having a child dying at home. Your child, your sick child. And instead of directing your energy towards that, you go to the neighbor's house because the guy over there beats his wife. Like, what are we doing? How are we not using our resources more appropriately? I get that we haven't in the past, but wasn't this the whole point of Trump being put into office again? Wasn't this why we as the American people stood up in mass for him? And for this to be the response, like going into another country and selling us the same lie that we've been told time and time again, oh yeah, we have to go into this country because he's a communist dictator and, you know, he's providing drugs to our American people. If the war is on drugs, there are so many problems we can solve right here on our home turf, and they're not. Mm-hmm. They're not doing that. And I don't care. I don't care if there's communist dictators in other parts of the world that don't affect our life, because our life is still on the decline. If we were like back to the glory days, if this was America at its strongest, if everyone here was happy, healthy, their needs were being met, their rights were being respected, then I would say, okay, sure, I guess, if that's what the American people want, to go out and fight for freedom elsewhere, let's do it. But we're losing our freedoms here left and right. Let's not pretend that we're fighting for freedom in other countries. We don't care about our freedom here.
Yeah. You just have gave me a whole plethora of topics to try to touch on. But to go back to the broad view of society at large, I simply have a hard time getting past the notion that so many folks, even the ones that may lean toward liberty-mindedness and constitutional adherence, I think they sit back and relax. All right, we got our guy in there. Now we just got to let him do his thing and have faith that what he's doing is right. Or their understanding of the rule of law, that starts with the Constitution, is so small, so infantile, that they don't have the ability to recognize that these things largely are out of bounds constitutionally. Now, you know, there's a lot of people, and many of them are heavy hitters, suggesting that this is in fact a constitutional act. There's precedents. I'm going to suggest that I disagree vehemently with that. Precedents does not supersede the Constitution. The Constitution says that Congress has the right to declare war. I understand that Trump is the commander-in-chief of the military, but Congress is who declares war. And then it is up to Trump to deploy the military as he sees fit. Once the voice of the people, remember, the very basis of this country is here the people rule. Well, I haven't heard a consensus from this country that we need to go into Venezuela because this country is going to be in dire straits if we don't. I have not heard that. I have not heard a majority of Congress say, pass by bill, a declaration of war authorizing Trump. And precedents, because it happened with Manuel Noriega in 1990, I don't care. Precedents does not supersede the Constitution. But even before that, as you were describing, Owen's background and this topic very well, I just have a hard time getting past the notion that society has already set back down. We're leaving it up to Trump. We're trusting whatever he does. So even when he crosses a line and goes back into doing exactly what he campaigned against, the majority have been conditioned by the lead up to this. As you described also, there's been a lot of lead up to this about, boy, we got to get down or we got to do something. The war drums were pounding, and many of the war hawks in Congress and in the media were supporting it. To me, it just seems like the deep state, i.e. the globalist cabal, has their fingers on this. We got to work like hell to get a global conflict going. And also the influences of big oil and big corporations obviously have their influence on this regime change, which is what it was. We pulled a guy out of there. And the other thing I find extremely funny is you can find reports, and not that far down into the rabbit hole, that suggests this whole thing was set up. Everybody knew we were coming in. There wasn't really any resistance put up. And we got to display our might and our we're out pounding our chest now on a global stage. Look at us. And there's reports out suggesting that the whole thing was set up and everybody knew it was going down. This guy knew it was coming down, and it was all prearranged. So I think, again, we have to take a broader look. We can't sit back and say, well, we put Trump in there, we're just going to accept what he does. Absolutely not. To me, it's out of bounds constitutionally. I don't care what kind of constitutional scholars argue the opposite. I would suggest that only Congress has the right to declare war. And if we're going into a country with military assets and snatching persons or material out of that country, that's an act of war. If somebody did it to us, it would be an act of war. So let's not put ourselves above the law and say, well, we need to keep our neighborhood cleaned up. No, because we're over there making sure that China doesn't do the same thing in their neighborhood and Russia doesn't do the same thing in theirs. So you can't have it both ways. Yeah. It's just complete hypocrisy to me.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's no new concept for our government by any means. This is something they've been practicing for a very long time. But, a couple remarks to some of the things you said. I often disagree with you when you say that nobody cares about these things. I don't think that's true. I do think it's probably true that the boomer population is uninterested, and I think they're likely more inclined to be the ones that are supporting this. I think the younger generations are not. To me, it feels very like Vietnam mindset. We have these. And it makes sense because in a lot of ways, this kind of hippie rebellion has been revitalized in a lot of ways. People returning to natural practices with food and health and so on. So it makes sense that you have this entire generation and beyond on both sides that is just staunchly opposed to what is going on here and staunchly opposed to any war efforts coming out of our country. It makes sense, right? Like we always say, history repeats itself. And this is a great example of that because I do think that the younger generations are in this camp, very much so. The issue, and where I'll agree with you, is that I think that though they know it's wrong and they can speak to the maybe moral and ethical issues, they can't speak to the constitutionality of it because they don't know it. So that part is true. If we simply look at the Constitution, we understand that this shouldn't have happened. And that's a very simple, we don't need to argue back and forth about, well, this word means this, and if it were worded differently, then it would mean this, and da-da-da-da. It is what it is. This is what the Constitution says. And you went against the Constitution by doing this. Flat out. There's no arguing that. There's no disputing that. And if everyone understood that it is simply written, then I think we could get united on our pushback. You know what I mean? Right now, people aren't 100% sure because, as always, there's so much confusion surrounding this, as there is with any news story. But what I think is good here is that the propaganda machine is broken. It broke, right around the time of Trump winning the election. Well, it broke before that, but we knew it was broken when Trump won. We knew it was broken when so many people were able to vote against the noise of the propaganda machine, the mainstream media and every other source that it uses, the education system and so on. So to try and push a war like this now is not the same as it was 20 years ago, because the American people now have the ability and the resources to seek out alternative voices, to find alternative information, to have a much fuller perception of everybody with a stake in the game, which that wasn't that possible before, or it was incredibly hard to do. Now it's a lot easier. And I don't think they can sell the rah, 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 America, go America, let's fight all the other countries idea that they could have, in 2001. So when we think back 20 years ago, it's a much, much different mindset that the American people have. And that's for many different reasons. Namely, we know we've been lied to countless times. And now, when our president, our vice president, many, many people who are supposed to be our leaders lie to our face, we know it. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of us can see through that now. What do we do with that information? I don't know. That's the big question. But I know that people can see it.
Well, I'm glad you are able to immerse yourself with folks that are able to recognize that. I'll just give you an example. From time to time, I stop and visit a tap room. It's one of the things that I do when I have the opportunity. And one of the things that I've heard since then, since the event of us invading and going in there, is people yucking it up about America flexing its muscles and all of that. And keep in mind, we're here in the middle of deplorable country, Bible thumping, clinging to your guns, chewing our tobacco and wearing our wool richies and all of that. And we are in the middle of an area that would be deeply rooted in traditional values. And I think, again, when you run into folks, whether it be at the local diner or at the tap room or out at the mall or whatever you're doing, and they really think that this was a big feather in the cap, you just shake your head in amazement that our understanding can be that shallow. If there was an imminent threat, and missile launch platforms being built in that country, and foreign nations amassing military assets to make an assault on the homeland, through an act of Congress declaring war, I think maybe then it would be fine to take some kind of action. But to drum this thing up, to gin this thing up as an effort to take out a drug kingpin who's overseeing what, as Owen points out, most of us recognize as something that the CIA has been meddling with for decades and decades, and to gin this up and be able to sell it as a notion that this was all to preserve and to squash down the fentanyl deaths and all this going on in this country. I think it was a bit of showmanship that maybe not as many as I suspect, but maybe it is more your way. And I truthfully hope that it is, because some of the folks that I bumped into since then, and I'm thinking these folks should know better, are kind of all puffed up now and pounding our chests that we showed them, a third-rate country. After all, it was probably set up and prearranged, but we went in there with our muscle and might and we took care of business. I just have a hard time with that. And then the last thing, I think you helped refresh my memory that I did want to make a point. You will recognize that the administration has come out many times in public statement now and said this is not a war, because they themselves recognize They have to try to tamp down this notion that we can't be engaged in a war without Congress first initiating through an act of war, even though every single one that we've been in since World War II has been the same exact thing. They can call it a police action. They can call it a need to get in there and get a narco drug terrorist out of there. Whatever they want to say, it was an act of war. It wasn't done properly. It was done out of bounds. Therefore, it was illegal if it was not compliant with the Constitution. So I think the administration is trying to tamp that down. I think the administration is trying to keep MAGA as a whole. We don't want these fracturings, but I stick to the rule of law, and MAGA is the movement. It's not the man. And we want to restore this nation to the rule of law, and that is the Constitution. And if enough of us think the Constitution needs to be changed, there is a mechanism to do that. Up until that time, we put you people in office to carry out and live by the Constitution, which this, in my estimation, simply was not.
No, it objectively wasn't. It's not just an opinion. It wasn't. And I know we kind of got into the weeds with this one, and I expected us to. I've got 2 more points I want to make before we go to the next topic here. The first is that the immediate argument that I do see from people is that, well, Maduro was a bad guy. Okay, there's a lot of bad guys. We're not doing shit about any of them. Fauci's a bad guy. We're not doing shit about Fauci. A lot of people would argue Bill Gates is a bad guy. Nobody's breaking into his house. So I'm not disputing the fact that Maduro is a bad guy. He probably is. And to be frank, what do we really know? What our media tells us about him? I mean, yeah, maybe he is a bad dude, a communist type dictator. Yeah, well, most of our governing officials are pretty communist minded. So let's not throw stones. Doesn't really matter if he's a bad guy or not, because going back to your first point, the constitutionality of it isn't there. There's no constitutional grounds. It doesn't matter if he's a good guy or a bad guy. That part is irrelevant. So anyone who takes that stance, I just am immediately like, okay, well, invalid. Your point is invalid. And the other thing that I wanted to say on that note is that we already mentioned how Trump and this administration have gotten involved with many countries since he took office this time. I think they've sent bombs into 8 countries. I might be, give or take one way or the other. Might be incorrect, but I think it's 8 since he took office, which is a lot because it hasn't even been a year. And they can say whatever they want because you're absolutely right. With every example, they say, well, it's not war. It's something else. They give it some other name. Look what happened with Iran. Well, we didn't go to war with them. We just got in there, did what we needed to do and got out. Okay, well, if I blew up a bomb, a pipe bomb, at the end of my driveway, I would go to jail for an act of terrorism. So, which is it? That's an act of war. An act of terrorism is an act of war. So, it's war or it isn't, and you can call it whatever you want, but it doesn't change what it is. So, those are kind of the last 2 notes that I had on that. And then I also wanted to mention that the whole Epstein thing, we know that the DOJ was supposed to release the full Epstein files. Unredacted, other than, sure, you can redact a name. You can redact a name without redacting whole paragraphs. Like, that's pretty easy to do. But we know that they, once again, gave us pages upon pages of redactions. And from what I'm seeing online, the deadline for the DOJ giving justification for the redactions that they did make in this last release was the same day as the Venezuela bombing and capture. So there could be a million reasons for this whole thing that went down in Venezuela. I do not think the timing of it is a coincidence. I think it's not solely to serve as a distraction, but I do think it's a good way to kill two birds with one stone.
Without a doubt. It's not coincidental. All of these things are well thought out. There was some objectives in Venezuela, mainly protect the oil reserves for the Western Hemisphere, as if that's our job to take over these countries if we don't like the way they're being run, or they have assets that we think belong to us. You might have heard that Colombia and Greenland are next, or at least that's what some reports are suggesting comes out of the Trump White House. But I know we're starting to slide away from the Venezuela thing a little bit, and I want to get back to the Epstein piece that you had initiated with, and there's reports out, and Margie Taylor Greene had a 5-minute clip about what her position was, on the Venezuela thing, and she stepped out of Congress today or yesterday, but she also had made there's some reports that she had made some suggestions that at some point, and she was one of the ones that very hard on getting the Epstein information out. There was a phone call that her particular wing of the House could, I guess most of them could hear, Trump or one of his henchmen up there in the office bellowing at Margie Taylor Greene that this stuff wasn't going to come out because friends of his were going to get hurt. Well, this is not the promises that were made. Invading Venezuela and talking about going into other countries, Mexico, Colombia, Greenland, of all things, it was not what we, the people, demanded from our new leadership. And he is going completely against it. And those that have not been willing to call out wrongs that were being done, I can only request that you take a good hard look at what you were voting for, what you were hoping to achieve, or did you just want the man in there? Were there objectives, or are you just a bootlicker of the man? If there were objectives, and he clearly is operating detrimentally to achieving those objectives, at some point it's up to all of us to call that out. Or we are no different than the uniparty. We have become the uniparty if we accept uniparty activities. So we have to recognize when the people that we have selected to represent us at whatever level, and they step out of bounds based on our understanding of the Constitution, rule of law, and the objectives that we set them people there to accomplish, we have to call it out. And that's what I see so little of. I mean, you hear heavy hitters singing the praises of this activity. We have a senator here in our state who I really held in high regard, supported him different times, different campaign, and singing the praises of this illegal snatch and grab kidnap of somebody who we deemed, the United States deemed, to be not a nice guy. We have to call out when it's wrong, it's wrong. And this whole Epstein thing, it's been theater from the get-go. They have waved it under our nose and then pulled it back, and lo and behold, another big distraction. Hopefully keep everybody looking elsewhere, and hopefully trying to get this further and further and further in the rearview mirror, keeping enough other big events in a 24-hour news cycle that hopefully the majority of us fall asleep on it. And I think they are achieving that end.
I think it's more that people just don't know what to do. I really do. I don't think it's that people don't want this stuff to happen. I think they just don't know what the solution is. Everybody that you have to turn to, everybody that you have to call, to write an email to show up in their office is on the wrong side. Yeah. So, well, what does that leave us? Fourth box. We know that. But we try to get enough people together.
Yeah.
And it's tough. And so if we're ready to move away from this conversation, it does kind of lead nicely into the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is...
Well, I want to jump in just for a second and suggest where do we go, what do we do? And we talked about it last week. What we do is we throw every one of them out. Remember, the House of Representatives is a key here. It's the voice of the people. We get to change the whole thing every 2 years. Do not vote for somebody that's in office. Put anybody in. It cannot get worse. It cannot get worse. Put anybody in. Do not put any of those skunks, thieves, cheats, liars back in office. Don't tell me yours is the good one. Do not tell me that. If they are going along, if they are not issuing articles of impeachment against judges and presidents who are acting unconstitutionally, they are not doing their job. They're not upholding their oath. They're not doing what they promised. Throw them out. That is the key. The last thing we have left, the House of Representatives is the key. We can change the whole body in 1 2-year cycle. We can change the whole thing. And they control the purse strings. Constitutionally, they control it. So if we want something to change, quit pretending that Republican-Democrat thing makes a difference. It doesn't. It's a damn joke. It's theater. They've crammed this crap down our throat since they forced income tax on us. Since back after the Civil War, this thing has been marching away from the Constitution, and we have been so busy striving to try to make a living and feed our families that we have grown numb to it. We have been plundered by the people that are in office to serve us. Serve us. And what are we doing? We're serving them. Do not serve them. Do not put any of them crooked bastards back in office.
You're right. You're right. And I know that is the one thing we can do. I don't know if enough people can attach themselves to the idea, but I like the idea of us reminding everybody of that every week, if it makes sense in the conversation, because you do get a lot of opportunities to vote. It's not just once every 4 years. I mean, there's actually a lot of opportunities to vote if you show up. That's the first thing. So, you're right. But the thing that I had kind of thought of going into next is some of the recent achievements that we've seen by the MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again movement. Now, this is a coalition that I do think has been able to link up and has stayed focused on their goal for years. So I think there's two sides to this coin. One, it is a great example to follow. If more groups with common interests could get together and stay focused and not get discouraged and show up again and again, regardless of the person in office, I think we could see individual wins. Maybe not as a whole, but we start to see wins in this category, wins in that category, and so on. I think that's a good concept. The issue with it, and when I say that it is a little bit of a double-edged sword, is that if we become too singularly focused on one goal, we lose sight of the whole mission, and it ultimately ends up with us pitting against ourselves, which I do think we're seeing right now. Mm-hmm. And a lot of this conversation speaks to that. So before we get into the division that it can cause, let's talk about some of the positives, because I know there have been quite a few. The big one, which is very recent news as we record this, is the massive update to the childhood vaccine schedule. They removed 55 of the previously mandated vaccines from that list. Now, of course, you get immediate pushback from those who worship the grounds of the Big Pharma gods. However, this doesn't change anything for those people. The vaccines are still available. You can still choose to get them. You just no longer have to for your child to participate in any part of life, like school, like sports. So this has been necessary for a long, long time. At least now there is some information that can't be disputed online for parents who question these things as far as the efficacy, the safety. Now they can look at something that they believe to be legitimate and go, okay, maybe I should at least question it. I think that's a great step. It's a small step, but it is a good step in the right direction. Another couple that I'd like to touch on before I get your feedback is that it sounds like doctors will no longer be penalized when patients choose to decline vaccines. Now, I have a big issue with this because why was that even going on in the first place? And I can think of personal experiences. I do not step foot into any medical facility very often, but when I have been pushed drugs every single time. And when you think about the fact that when I say no, they lose money, it makes so much sense why they've pushed so hard. So the fact that now that's going away, thank God, truly, because that's insane and that's criminal. Speaking of people we should be going after who are actually bad guys. And then the last one is that I think it may have been a couple months ago, we talked about Section 453 that was in the 2026 Interior Environment Appropriations Bill. That was the one that was meant to limit warnings, regulations, and guidance that were applied to pesticides, as well as granting chemical companies immunity. They have removed that from that bill. So this is a win. Now, we can get into the weeds as far as the 2026 Interior Environment Appropriations Bill. Mm-hmm. We already know that's unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. There's $38.6 billion worth of other funding in that bill. So, overall, loss. But there is a small win in there when we are thinking about the Making America Healthy Again movement. So, I'll send it over to you now that I've got those thoughts out there.
I agree, and I'm glad we got to this because I think what we ought to try to do as we look forward to the new year is find a feel-good story, even if it's shallow or if it doesn't go as deep as we'd like it to. This is a feel-good story where it is no longer mandated that 55 or so shots that these children, these are all chemical concoctions being stuffed into children, and we're wondering why the autism rates and all these other childhood ailments have gone through the roof. This is good news on its face. It certainly is. My argument, as you pointed out at the end of your piece there, is, first of all, who in the hell gave the federal government, and show me, please, somebody show me where this is an authority that is delegated to the federal level or any other. Who gets to tell me what I have to put into my children's body? If this stuff works and all the other people who are afraid of the boogeyman go out and get their shot, then what difference does it make if mine did not? That's the whole thing. People got to start seeing. And the other point you made is if you go into the doctor's office and you're not going to get away from them without some kind of medication being pushed on you or suggested that you move to a maintenance drug, that you're going to probably take the rest of your life. But it's every time you go, this is the sort of thing who do you think is driving healthcare? It's not somebody who has a pure and innocent view of what I can do to help you. It is big money, as it always is. And we, like sheep, have accepted this criminal behavior from the big pharma giants and our legislators who have forced this crap on us through statute and lawmaking, even if it is unconstitutional. So there's a whole bunch of stuff there that we could spend hours ripping apart as to why me, you, everybody out there as a free person has it mandated to us that if you want to participate in society at any level, you are going to have to take these shots. It's just like when we went into the service. Okay, I volunteered. I get a whole bunch of shots. Don't even know what they all were. People are dropping over right and left as they're going down the line, getting shots on both sides of their arm because we're being told that this is going to protect us in the event that we have to go overseas or da-da-da-da-da. Now we have taken that whole concept and applied it to the whole country. Even these innocent children that have no ability to make a decision for themselves, we are cramming this stuff into them. It should have never, ever, ever got to the point that it was mandated by any level of government. If somebody wants to present to you that, hey, here's some studies that would suggest this would be a good thing for your child to have at some point because it's going to prevent this and that, and here's the studies and the overwhelming evidence that show there's no negative effects. If somebody wants to put that in your lap to make a decision, an informed decision, that is fine. For somebody to tell you that you, a mom and a dad of a new baby, have to put this crap into their child, it is an outrage. It is nothing close to what the forefathers fought and died for. It is big government cramming itself at the hands of Big Pharma down our throats. And we should have been outraged and never let it get to this point. But the good news is it was pulled back. I guess since it's not constitutionally authorized, it doesn't go through Congress. We take care of it by another unconstitutional means, which is executive order. And in this case, I'm thankful that it's done, even though it was done out of bounds of the rule of law.
Yeah. Agree. So, couple things there. And the first one is that, to your point, the COVID vaccine is now starting to be discussed in a way that is negative, which for many of us, we believed to be negative from the get-go, but that's not really the point. The main point for us was that you had the ability to choose whether you got it or not without coercion. And we're starting to discuss the legality of that only now, years later. But that was never part of the discussion with these childhood vaccines, yet they were no different. Maybe the coercion didn't look the same because you weren't going to lose your job and your income as a child, as an infant baby, but the coercion for the parents was the same because, well, your kid won't be able to go to school. That's coercion too. That's the same thing. And we're not talking about that. And I think when I spoke about the divide that this type of thing could cause, and I don't mean it to sound like it's a bad thing, because it's not. It is good. But when you have people who are so tied to a singular cause and lose sight of the grand picture, there is an issue that lies within that, because I do think that now you have the people who say, well, I'm against the COVID vaccine, but I think the rest of the vaccines should be required. That's a problem, because you're not understanding what the root issue is. The root issue is the coercion. The root issue is the lack of freedom, the freedom that was taken from you and everybody else. Every single time, you do not get to make your own choice. Across the board, this is not just a purely medical conversation. Look at anything in your life. If you don't get to choose, or you'll be punished if you choose the wrong thing, you do not have freedom in that category. If you can drive down the road and you will get a fine if you don't wear your seatbelt because you chose as a person with free will not to wear your seatbelt, if you will get a fine for that, that is an example of when in your life your freedom has been taken away from you. And they're small, they're microaggressions, but they're all over. They're riddled throughout your life. And this is just one example. And I think that this is a big problem because there are so many people like this who fight so hard for one thing that it lends itself to this division that we've been talking about through the last couple weeks. Now we have this division that's on our side. All these right-wing people, all of these people who were pro-MAGA. There's all of these tiny divisions being split between all of us so that we can't stand together. When we want to, we can't, because we're so upset about that one small thing, whether it's in the medical field or elsewhere. Because the MAHA movement is winning here. I mean, these are great, great things. There's much work to be done, but these are great, great progresses to be made. Great steps in the right direction. But all the while, the anti-war movement is losing. And some of the people who were 100% focused on securing the border, they are pretty happy right now. But what about all of the people who went into this fighting the idea of expanding surveillance? All these people voted for Trump for this one thing. This is the one thing that I'm really focused on. When your cause wins, you cannot forget that the other pieces to the puzzle are losing. We're fighting for freedom as a whole, and it requires our diligence with every single one of these categories. It's great to get excited when we get a win, but let's not let it distract us from all the other shit we're losing.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I think what more than anything, what we need to try to stress here is we are the pro-liberty movement. We're taking a slice from the right. We're taking a slice from the left. We are not right, nor are we left. We are pro-liberty. We are for the liberty that was intended, which is to live your life as you see fit, meaning anything. You do anything up until the point that it infringes on somebody else's right to live the life as they choose. You know why that's not going to happen? Look at the volumes and volumes of revenue collecting violations that are going to go away. The theft, stealing violations in the name of taxes and penalties and fines, as you just pointed out, seatbelts. Is it a good idea? I think almost all of us could suggest that it is a good idea to wear some sort of restraint in a fast-moving automobile, right? I think it's a good idea. Do they have the authority to mandate it? It's a loss of freedom. Every law equals a loss of freedom. We here stand for the liberty movement, the liberty we were supposed to have. I don't care if you come from the right. I don't care if you come from the left. We stand for freedom. I don't want anybody telling me I have to do anything or I cannot do something. That is not what this country was built on. This country was built on you do whatever the hell it is that makes you happy up until the point that it takes some bit of liberty away from somebody else. Now government's job is to step in and rectify that. Other than that, government should be a part-time job. All of this crap, imperialistic invasions of nations, all of this stuff that's going on, dictating vaccines, dictating the education system, it is nowhere authorized. And we have sleepwalked ourselves into having no liberty left. All as we're trying to do here is come from the left, come from the right. If you want freedom, if you value freedom, if a burning desire in your heart is to live as you see fit, then this is the place for you to come, because this is what we will continue to fight for. And the Constitution set up the framework to defend that notion, to defend the right to liberty as you see fit. And that's why we've stressed to educate yourself on the Constitution, because the framework was there. It was up to us to recognize it, learn how to use it. And if we can do anything before we get to that fourth box, we are striving to do that. And my suggestion is start with throwing every single bum out of the House of Representatives and put somebody new in. We cannot possibly do any worse in the cause of liberty.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Perfectly said. All the way around. Just like Benjamin Franklin said, we have a republic if we can keep it. We cannot keep pointing fingers at people in government. It's up to us if we can keep it. That's our job, our duty. So 2026, big year ahead. Please remember, it is your right and responsibility to take this country back, to restore the republic that we were so blessed to be born in. Or for some of you who came about it the right way, have immigrated into this country.
Amen. Hallelujah. We look forward. We are still remaining optimistic. We are still encouraging folks that are listening to share this podcast. Don't forget that the Lord himself said, if this nation called by my name would humble itself and pray, I would hear from heaven and heal their land. There is part of the solution. We can do what we can here, but we cannot forget that we have a responsibility to pray for this country. Do not be afraid. Do not be ashamed. I am not ashamed of this gospel. It's the power of God unto salvation. So we are promoting the idea of becoming educated, becoming involved, learning what we have to do here to fight against the oppression that's being pushed on us, but also to pray. And remember, have a great day. Every day is worth living, and it's worth fighting for.
Yeah, amen. So, nothing more to add from me. Was there anything else you wanted to get into before the Bible verse tonight?
The only thing I wanted to say was when this episode airs, I will be en route to a neighborhood out near Seattle, Washington. I will be convening with the CSPOA, Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, who are out there standing in support of the Washington sheriffs, who, by the way, are trying to be removed from an elective office and something that gets appointed or otherwise installed, which is, I would suggest, I'm not that familiar with the Washington state constitution, but this seems to me like it's a disruption of the executive branch at the state level. So we will be out there on Friday. Tomorrow, after this airs, General Mike Flynn is the keynote speaker, and other dignitaries will be there standing in support of the Washington State County Sheriffs, pushing back against what appears to be a power grab from the state governor or the government out there to try to reduce the impact that the sheriffs are able to have. So I hope everybody gets a chance to look that up. I'm sure the CSPOA will have information related to that on their website.
Perfect. Yeah. And if you could take some notes while you're out there, we could maybe try to do a recap next week if it makes sense. So yeah, we'll see how that goes and try to recap it for everybody.
Okay. Until next week, then, I have the Bible verse.
Perfect.
Now, little children, abide in him so that when he appears, we may have confidence and not shrink away from him in shame at his coming. That's 1 John chapter 2, verse 28. So, Happy New Year, everybody. Good night, and we will see you soon.
Alrighty, folks. We'll see you next week. Stay vigilant.
Thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate the support and truly love getting to share this message with anyone who wants or needs it. The best way for you to support the show is to subscribe, add a rating, and share with everyone you know. You can find us on Instagram, X, and at thefourthbox.com. We'll see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Stay vigilant.